Listen in.
These grants cover California's firefighting costs for things like firefighting equipment, firefighters' salaries, and special capabilities like aircraft. Next, yesterday I immediately approved Governor Newsom's request for what they call, and I know this is all sounds like government talk, but it's called the Major Disaster Declaration. This declaration allows folks, at the request of the governor, the declaration allows folks who have been impacted to get immediate cash assistance to cover things like everything from groceries to baby formula to prescriptions, because as you've seen and you reported, a lot of these places are burned to the ground. There's not a single thing left in their homes. And so if they contact disasterassistance.gov, anybody who's lost everything or anything of consequence, disasterassistance.gov or 1-800-621-3362. That's disasterassistance.gov, 1-800-621-3362 to get the kind of help they need for everything from the basics that they don't have access to right now. And this morning, due to the magnitude of the disaster, I was talking with the governor, and he requested if I could increase the federal funding that was authorized under this legislation from 75% to 90%. We're increasing it to 100% of all the costs to be covered by the federal government for both the fire management assistance grants and the elements of what they call the disaster declaration. So today I'm announcing that the federal government will cover 100% of the cost for 180 days. This is going to pay for things like debris and hazard material removal, temporary shelters, first responders' salaries, and all necessary measures to protect life and property. And folks, I want to underscore, I told the governor and local officials, spare no expense to do what they need to do and contain these fires and in their communities that have really been devastated. And we're doing literally everything we can at a federal level. That's also why I call this group of folks around this table of all relevant federal departments and agencies together to discuss what more we can do, and some of the folks around the screen as well. Before we begin things, here's an update on where things stand right now. First, we're focused on helping contain these fires. Over the last 24 hours, the United States Forest Service, working with state and local responders, has suppressed over 50 fire starts. And the fire in the Hollywood Hills has been contained by brave firefighters risking their lives. Right now, 3 major fires are still burning in the Pacific Palisades, in Pasadena, and in Sylmar. I want to be clear. What I know from talking to the governor, that there are concerns out there that there's also been a water shortage. The fact is, the utilities understandably shut off power because they're worried the lines that they carried energy were going to be blown down and spark additional fires. But the Cal Fire, when it did that, it cut off the ability to generate pumping the water. That's what caused the lack of water in these hydrants. And so Cal Fire is bringing in generators to get these pumps up and working again so that there's no longer a shortage of water coming out of these hydrants. I'm also surging all federal resources possible to Southern California, including 400 additional federal firefighters, over 30 firefighting helicopters and planes, federally supplied, firefighting planes and helicopters, and 8 Department of Defense C-130s that are equipped to suppress wildfires. Today, the Secretary of Defense also authorized 500 wildfire ground clearing personnel from the Defense Department. And I've directed the department to continue working with Governor Newsom to identify additional resources that can be provided for public safety and security. And we've secured additional firefighters and firefighting aircraft from our ally in Canada as well. I also want everyone in Southern California to know we're going to keep at it. We're sticking with this. We expect there may be a temporary break in the winds, but in some areas the winds are likely to continue well into next week. And so we're going to continue to sending everything, literally, every resource we can find that's appropriate to help the governor and the first responders. Second, we're focused on helping people who have been displaced or in many cases lost everything. You reported on, you've seen the homes just burned to the ground, whole areas burned to the ground, large areas. They've been displaced and they've lost everything. As I said, since the fire started, FEMA has been working with the state to help residents get shelter, groceries, prescriptions, and other critical goods like baby formula. We're also sent FEMA Director Criswell to Los Angeles to manage our response on the ground. She was supposed to be on this call, but we have the deputy here because she is out in the field with the governor right now, surveying what's going on. Let me close with a message to the people of Southern California. We are with you. We're not going anywhere. To the firefighters and first responders, you are heroes. Many of these firefighters are out there risking their lives and some, well, I won't go beyond that, but risking their lives, and while their own homes are in danger, their families are in danger. To the firefighters and first responders, you really are, it's not hyperbole, you're heroes. You're genuinely heroes. And the worst, this is the most widespread, devastating fire in California's history. It's amazing. And there's nobody understands it better than the press has been covering this on a minute-to-minute basis. And you literally have to run into the flames, these firefighters. You know that old expression, God made man, then he made a few firefighters. Who runs into flames? You know, in doing so, you're leaving your own families and who may be in harm's way as well. So we owe you. And we're going to make sure that you get every resource you need, every possible resource you need. You know, to the families who have been impacted by this disaster, you're living through a nightmare, I know. And I promise you, we're going to help you get through this and eventually recover and rebuild. I'm going to turn it over now to the Vice President before we go on to the folks in the various cabinet positions as well as agencies that control these issues. Madam Vice President, I know you're directly affected, so you fire away. No pun intended.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr. President, and also for the work that everyone around this table has been doing with the appropriate sense of urgency, because this is an urgent matter. What we have seen in California, and in particular in Southern California, is apocalyptic in terms of the nature of it and the unprecedented nature of it as well. And what we are seeing is a situation that is extremely dynamic. It is very much in play, and to some degree unpredictable, because we are literally waiting to see which way the wind blows. And I cannot praise enough the local leaders, most of whom I have talked with, and in particular our firefighters, who, as the President has said, they are working around the clock. They are working 12-hour, even longer shifts, and they are doing it with a sense of optimism, but also with an understanding of how serious this moment is and how important their work is to real lives and real people. Thousands of families have been displaced. Many of those families with young children with nowhere to go. And what we know is that this is a matter of current urgency, but this is also something that is going to have an impact for months and years to come. And on that point, I will also make note of the fact that, sadly, many insurance companies have canceled insurance for a lot of the families who have been affected and will be affected, which is only going to delay or place an added burden on their ability to recover. And I think that is an important point that must be raised, and hopefully there can be some way to address that issue, because these families, so many of them, otherwise will not have the resources to recover in any meaningful way. And many of them have lost everything. In the midst, however, of all of the trauma that has occurred, we have seen extraordinary acts of heroism I'm hearing countless stories of strangers helping strangers. People who are opening their homes where they are intact and have not had to evacuate, opening their homes to neighbors, to friends of neighbors, feeding them and providing shelter for them. And I do think that it speaks to the best of who we are as a country, which is in times of crisis, we find the heroes among us who we may not have known before, but act out of a sense of courage, but also a sense of community. And I applaud all those who are approaching this crisis with that spirit. And the bottom line is this: there are incredible heroes every day who are working right now in California on the front lines of this fire. And in particular, I want to thank the firefighters for all they are doing. They are, as the president said, putting themselves in harm's way. And they are doing the work that is about helping people who are perfect strangers to them and doing it in some of the highest moments of need that anyone could face. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz Sherwood-Randall.
Turn it back to me.
Okay, back to the president.
Look, I've had a chance to speak with a lot of the elected officials, including the senators, some of the congresspersons in the region.
And there you've heard it from the Vice President of the United States, who is from California, and the President of the United States promising new federal support to the state of California. The President announcing a surging of officials and resources, including 400 additional federal firefighters, 30 firefighting helicopters and planes, and then the Pentagon and the Defense Department helping out as well. We're talking about 8 C-130s that are equipped to suppress wildfires. So that is a big move, as the federal government is going to help as well. Let's check in on the ground with our own Chris Van Cleve, who is among the destruction from the Eaton fire in Altadena, California. And Chris, what can you tell us about what's happening there today?
Well, Nora, down here on the ground in the cities, the winds have died down noticeably. So firefighters have been able to go basically block by block, checking all of this destruction for hotspots. They want to knock that down before the winds kick up tonight, because there can be embers that are embedded sitting under the debris. Those will start other fires. Up in the mountains where the Eaton fire is raging, it is racing towards Mount Wilson, the highest point in Los Angeles, home to key transmission towers. There's an aerial attack going on trying to beat back that fire right now. And that's why those aerial assets the president was talking about are so important. It was from the air that firefighters were able to stop the fire last night, the Sunset Fire, as it was racing towards Hollywood. That air support is critical to stopping these giant fires. We also spent the day with people who came home to find homes like this, where all that was left was rubble. We went with one woman as she was walking through a house that she bought 10 years ago after her husband died. She's a widow, and she said she wanted to start anew. She came home to that new start, needing to start over again. One of the only things that survived the fire was a small ceramic church. She said she's taking that as a sign that someone is looking out for her. In this case, it certainly also was her neighbor, who pounded on her door and demanded that she evacuate as the fire started to rage Monday night. And it's stories like that, Nora, block after block after block. There are also tragedies. 5 people, at least, have died from this fire. One of them stayed behind to try to protect his home, and it cost him his life.
Oh, my goodness. As that phrase goes, look for the helpers, and certainly many neighbors and trying to help one another. Chris, can I ask you about what's ahead? Because even though the winds have died down a bit today, they are forecast to pick up tonight and this weekend. What's the big concern?
Well, we're talking about wind gusts of 35 to 50 miles an hour tonight. To give you some context, the Sunset Fire, that fire that threatened Hollywood last night that kicked up, those were only 20 to 25 mile an hour winds, and that fire grew to a life and property threat in under an hour. So sustained wind gusts of 30 to 50 miles an hour, that's going to blow embers 1, 2, even 3 miles away. Those embers, those are basically flying little balls of fire. When they come down on something and they can ignite it, they will. The concern is that right now you have 5 fires, and tonight you'll have even more. And we saw how fast those fires can spread when the wind is pushing them. I think everyone in Southern California is holding their breath.
Oh, my goodness, Chris Van Cleve, thank you for being there. Thank you for your reporting. I want to bring in CBS's Scott MacFarlane. He's at the White House. Scott also covers Capitol Hill for us. And Scott, the president announced that the federal government will cover 100% of the cost of recovery for 180 days. Is he going to need congressional approval for that?
He's going to need a lot more money in the near future, and that's ultimately going to be on President-elect Trump's desk and this new Congress. And Nora, the Congress of 2024 was at loggerheads constantly, even just approving disaster money. For Hurricane Helene, for example, this is going to be a problem come February and March, getting boatloads of money to the people of California to respond to what Vice President Harris just described as an apocalyptic event. This briefing from the president and vice president among their last actions in office. There are just 11 days remaining in this term, and President Biden canceled a long-awaited, heavily touted trip to Rome and to the Vatican to meet Pope Francis to be part of this response. But this will cost enormous amounts of money, Nora, and it'll have to go through Washington that has been stalemated on even the most basic of spending, including for disaster victims.
It's an excellent point, Scott MacFarlane, at the White House following those remarks from the president and the vice president. And just to update now, these wildfires in LA County are burning out of control for the third straight day. County officials estimate that thousands of structures have been destroyed. And they've also emphasized there's a lot we still don't know, including how many people are dead. Hundreds of thousands of people are under evacuation warnings. The LA County Sheriff said that some areas look like a bomb was dropped in them. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and we'll have a full wrap-up tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Nora O'Donnell.
You've been listening to a CBS News Special Report. I'm Ed O'Keefe in Washington. We continue that coverage that Nora mentioned. President Biden says he's approved a disaster declaration for California as 3 major fires continue to burn. He added the federal government will do everything to assist the state as it deals with this disaster. We begin this hour with the warning from the president saying that the fires now are expected to continue, quote, well into next week, but that the federal response will continue to be robust, with hundreds of federal firefighters joining thousands of local and state firefighters on the ground and dozens of federal aircraft also in the skies helping put out these fires. Let's get another update on the situation right now with CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen, who's in Pasadena. Tom, what are you seeing at this hour?
Hey there, well, we're in Pasadena, standing outside of the exhibit hall and ballroom. Just a week ago, this was the site of the Rose Bowl parade. Well, now it has turned into an emergency relief and disaster relief center that's housing some 1,200 people, young and old, families, single people, the elderly. So many people are here, and they're not just here from the Pasadena area. They're actually here from all over Los Angeles. And I want to take you around here so you can see exactly what we're seeing on the ground. You can see that food trucks have lined up over here, offering free food for people who are in need. We've also seen people bringing bottles of water. A woman over here is making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Really, people in this community are doing anything and everything they can in order to help. Now, this is all unfolding as 5 fires around Los Angeles continue to rage. We are closest to the Eaton fire right now. We're about a stone's throw. We're not right on the fire line, but we're far enough away, we're close enough, I should say, that I don't know if you can see on my shirt, there is a flecks of ash that keep on falling out of the sky. It kind of feels like little flurries of snow, except for it's ash from the fires, and that explains why I am wearing this mask. That speaks to not only the immediate danger of the flames, but also the danger that you can't see, which is the air quality in this area. You know, as you look up at the sky over here, you can see that the sun is pretty much clouded. That is a layer of smoke. That is a blanket of smoke, I should say, in this area, and that's what's affecting people. So when you're considering that a lot of the people in this area are the elderly, they are especially susceptible to issues and conditions that come with pollution and air pollution in particular. So that's front of mind of a lot of the people who are here right now. But currently, a lot of the people here are waiting to see what's left of their home. They may have been evacuated and not had a chance to visit the neighborhoods that they left behind. In the drop of a hat, time after time, the stories that we've heard are people being woken up in the middle of the night, having to leave on a moment's notice to get out of the way of the Eaton fire. Unfortunately, that fire has claimed hundreds of structures in the Altadena area, which is nearby here. So a lot of people anxiously awaiting a chance to get back to what is left of their homes. Back to you.
Tom Henson, thank you. You could see the ash, you could hear it in his voice as well. It remains a perilous situation there. For more coverage of the fires, let's turn to our colleagues at CBS News Los Angeles who've been running coverage 24/7 there across Southern California. Let's listen in.
County local officials getting a briefing on the fire to really understand what the needs are as we move forward, not only with regard to the firefight, which Chief Moore was talking about, but also to regard to support the population displaced. Over 360,000 under mandatory evacuations, hundreds of thousands more with warnings. And so what we're doing now is ensuring that that we're able to provide any support to provide mass care to individuals, any assistance for the sheltering, any assistance for feeding. And then through the programs that we provide through our individual assistance that you authorize through the declaration, we're able to assist individuals with funding to offset their hotel costs. So applying to FEMA on the 1-800-621-3362 number is important, or disasterassistance.gov. We're sending teams out to the shelters. We know that there'll be a huge need after fires for mental health specialists, and working with HHS on providing that. As the Vice President talked about, insurance is problematic in California, especially with the fires. And so not only do some of the changes in our authorities help now with those that are underinsured, which we see more and more, but we want those that are insured to start seeking assistance to their insurance companies. Our programs can help individuals, especially displaced and who have lost their homes, with rental assistance until they can rebuild, and ultimately provide temporary housing. So we're in discussions with state and local governments on how we will meet those housing needs, both in the interim by using available stockage here, but how can we help rebuild? And then lastly, I would just say that we're really focused on already starting to discuss debris removal and all the hazardous waste that comes from fire and how to remove that safely between local, state, and federal government. We'll rely on federal partners, US EPA, the Corps of Engineers, and others to be part of that technical assistance help to support the safe removal so that ultimately we could rebuild. And one of the new things that we will start doing in the next couple of days is starting that discussion on how do we rebuild, and not only rebuild, but rebuild more resilient and bring together state and local federal agencies to start that discussion in the weeks to months ahead. And so right now we're focused on meeting the immediate needs of those displaced, but already starting to work on recovery and rebuild and bringing all our authorities and the full weight of the federal government and all the resources that you've authorized to help California in that endeavor.
Bob, what do you think the biggest challenge is?
Also,
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the biggest challenge is going to be the mental health stress that is put on individuals that have lost everything. Fires are, so drastic. They destroy everything very quickly. Individuals don't have a lot of notice to leave, and so I think there's going to be a significant mental health strain, followed by a need to help individuals recover and rebuild. And the Vice President is exactly right. I suspect that many have insurance, many are underinsured. And insurance is difficult to get, and some might have lost their insurance or been canceled by insurance companies. And I think that's something we need to continue to work on, as a government at all levels, but something where there'll be gaps in assistance that we will need to bring in not only federal agencies, but nonprofits, private sector to help meet those needs.
I think we're going to have to do that. In addition, the fact is that the 2 declarations I signed, provide for example, the rebuilding of churches and schools and certain, but not businesses, not business centers. And so that's going to be a gigantic cost as well. But the debris removal is a big deal. And that's going to take a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it will take some time to remove the debris. In California, unfortunately, we've had a lot of experience with fighting fires and removing debris, and so it will take months to a year. This is a very widespread with significant damage to infrastructure, and we want to not only immediately remove the hazards, things like propane tanks, some of the power cells that are there, and other contaminants that may be in households, and make sure that they're safe to re-enter, and we look for personal effects. But then the second part is removing that ash, and what we've done before is help people with the removal so that we could get down on the grade and then immediately.
You've been watching CBS News Los Angeles coverage of the Southern California wildfires. If you're on the CBS News app or Paramount Plus, you know you can toggle over and continue watching them, or if you are more interested, go ahead and check them out on the CBS News app, cbsnews.com. Right now, nearly 200,000 people are under evacuation orders in Southern California. We will, of course, continue to monitor the situation through the rest of this hour and through the rest of the evening and take you back to California later on. But coming up, Jimmy Carter, the former president, is back home for good in Plains, Georgia. This afternoon, his family is gathering to lay him to rest. We will get the latest from the Peach State of Georgia as America says goodbye to the 39th president. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. America Decides.